In a galaxy far, far away, there was a powerful and cruel group called the Galactic Empire. They had a big army and liked to control other planets. One day, the leaders of the Galactic Empire decided to send their army to a blue planet called Earth. They wanted to take over Earth and make the people there their slaves. On Earth, there was a young and brave astronaut named Jack. He loved to explore space and go on exciting missions. One day, Jack was on a normal mission in his spaceship when suddenly, he heard a strange noise. It was a weird signal coming from somewhere in space. Jack was curious, so he decided to follow the signal and see where it would take him. As Jack flew his spaceship towards the signal, he saw something strange in the distance. It was another spaceship, but it looked very different from the ones on Earth. It was much bigger and had strange markings on it. Jack carefully moved his spaceship closer to get a better look. When he was close enough, Jack realized that the strange spaceship belonged to the Galactic Empire. He had heard stories about the Empire before. They were known for being mean and taking over other planets. Jack knew he had to get back to Earth quickly and warn everyone about what he had seen. Jack turned his spaceship around and raced back to Earth as fast as he could. When he finally landed, he ran to the headquarters of the Earth Alliance. The Earth Alliance was a group of leaders from different countries who worked together to keep Earth safe. Jack burst into the meeting room where the leaders were talking. "I have important news," he shouted. "I found a spaceship from the Galactic Empire near Earth. I think they're planning to attack us." The leaders of the Earth Alliance were shocked. They knew about the Galactic Empire and how dangerous they could be. They started talking quickly, trying to figure out what to do. "We need to prepare our military," said one leader. "We have to be ready to fight back if the Empire attacks." "But our weapons aren't as strong as theirs," said another leader. "We need to find a way to make peace with them instead of fighting." The leaders argued back and forth, but they couldn't agree on what to do. Some wanted to fight the Empire, while others wanted to try and talk to them. Finally, they decided to send a group of ambassadors to the Galactic Empire's home planet. The ambassadors would try to talk to the Empire's leaders and find out why they wanted to attack Earth. Maybe they could make a deal and avoid a big war. The ambassadors got in a spaceship and set off for the Empire's planet. It was a long and scary journey, but they were brave and believed in their mission. When they finally arrived, they were taken to the Empire's main building to meet with the leaders. The ambassadors tried to talk to the Empire's leaders and make peace, but it didn't work. The leaders of the Empire didn't want to talk. They just wanted to take over Earth and make the humans their slaves. The ambassadors realized that the Empire was too powerful and cruel to reason with. Sadly, the ambassadors returned to Earth with bad news. They told the Earth Alliance that the Galactic Empire was planning a big attack on Earth very soon. The leaders of Earth now knew they had to prepare for a huge war against the Empire. Back on Earth, Jack was hailed as a hero for warning everyone about the Galactic Empire's plans. But he knew that his job was far from over. He started training even harder, getting ready to fight against the Empire in space. As the people of Earth prepared for war, they couldn't help but feel scared about what was coming. They had never faced an enemy like the Galactic Empire before. But they also knew they had to be brave and work together if they wanted to protect their home. The fate of Earth was in their hands, and they were determined to fight for their freedom, no matter what challenges lay ahead. The leaders of the Earth Alliance were in a tough spot. They had just learned that the Galactic Empire was planning to attack Earth and make all humans their slaves. They knew they had to act fast to protect their planet, but they weren't sure what to do. Some leaders wanted to fight back with all their military might. They thought that Earth's armies could stand up to the Empire's forces and win. But others weren't so sure. They knew that the Empire had much more advanced weapons and technology than Earth did. As the leaders argued and debated, Jack sat quietly in the corner of the room. He was the young astronaut who had first discovered the Empire's spaceship near Earth. He had been invited to the meeting to share what he knew. Finally, Jack spoke up. "I think we need to try and make peace with the Empire," he said. "Fighting them head-on would be too dangerous. We need to find a way to negotiate with them." Some of the leaders nodded in agreement, while others looked skeptical. But in the end, they decided to follow Jack's advice. They would send a group of diplomats to the Empire's home planet to try and talk things out. The diplomats boarded a spaceship and set off on their mission. It was a long and treacherous journey through the stars, but they were determined to do whatever it took to protect Earth. When they finally arrived at the Empire's planet, they were greeted by a group of fierce-looking soldiers. The soldiers led them to the palace of the Empire's emperor, a tall, imposing figure with cold, dark eyes. The diplomats tried to reason with the emperor, explaining that Earth meant no harm and only wanted to live in peace, but the emperor merely laughed at their words. "Peace," he sneered. "There can be no peace between the strong and the weak. The Galactic Empire will conquer Earth and enslave its people, just as we have done to countless other planets before." The diplomats were shocked and horrified by the emperor's words. They realized that there would be no negotiating with the Empire. They were too ruthless and power-hungry to listen to reason. Dejected and afraid, the diplomats returned to Earth to deliver the bad news. The leaders of the Earth Alliance were devastated to learn that their efforts at diplomacy had failed. They knew that an attack from the Empire was now inevitable. As panic began to spread across the planet, Jack and his team of astronauts sprang into action. They knew that they were Earth's last line of defense against the Empire's invasion. Jack and his team boarded their spaceships and set out to patrol the edges of Earth's solar system. They kept a close eye out for any sign of the Empire's forces, determined to sound the alarm at the first sight of trouble. For days, they saw nothing. But then, on the fourth day of their patrol, they spotted something strange on their radar screens. It was a massive fleet of spaceships, bigger than anything they had ever seen before. As they drew closer, Jack and his team realized with horror that the ships belonged to the Galactic Empire. They were heavily armed and looked ready for battle. Jack's heart raced as he realized the gravity of the situation. The Empire's invasion had begun, and Earth was in terrible danger. Without hesitation, Jack sent a message back to Earth, warning them of the impending attack. He and his team then turned their spaceships around and raced back to Earth as fast as they could. As they approached their home planet, Jack and his fellow astronauts could see the Empire's ships getting closer and closer. They knew that time was running out. When they finally landed back on Earth, Jack rushed to the Earth Alliance headquarters to deliver his dire warning in person. The leaders of Earth listened in stunned silence as Jack described the size and strength of the Empire's fleet. It was clear that Earth was facing its greatest threat yet. The Empire's forces were more powerful than anything they had ever encountered before. The fate of the entire planet hung in the balance. As fear and uncertainty gripped the people of Earth, the leaders of the Alliance knew that they had to act fast. They ordered a full-scale mobilization of Earth's military forces, calling on every able-bodied person to join the fight against the Empire. The stage was set for a battle unlike any the galaxy had ever seen before. Earth was about to face its ultimate test, a fight for survival against the most powerful enemy it had ever known. The future of the entire human race hung in the balance, and only time would tell if they would emerge victorious or be crushed under the heel of the Galactic Empire. The Earth Alliance had sent a group of diplomats to the Galactic Empire's home planet, hoping to find a peaceful solution to the looming conflict. But when the diplomats arrived, they were shocked by what they found. The Empire's leaders were cold and ruthless, with no interest in negotiation or compromise. They saw the people of Earth as nothing more than potential slaves to be conquered and controlled. In a tense meeting with the Empire's emperor, the diplomats tried to explain that Earth meant no harm and only wanted to live in peace, but the emperor simply laughed in their faces. "You are weak and foolish," he sneered. "The Galactic Empire is the most powerful force in the universe, and we will crush anyone who stands in our way. Earth will be ours, and your people will serve us forever." The diplomats were horrified by the emperor's words. They realized that there would be no reasoning with the empire, no chance for peace. Earth was in grave danger, and time was running out. With heavy hearts, the diplomats returned to Earth to deliver the bad news to the Earth Alliance. The leaders of the Alliance were devastated by the report, but they knew they had to act fast. They ordered a full mobilization of Earth's military forces, calling on every able-bodied person to join the fight against the Empire. Factories worked around the clock to produce weapons and spacecraft, while training camps sprang up across the planet to prepare the new recruits for battle. As the people of Earth rallied together to defend their home, Jack and his team of astronauts continued their patrols at the edges of the solar system. They knew that the Empire's attack could come at any moment, and they were determined to be ready. For days, they scanned the skies for any sign of the enemy fleet, but there was no trace of them. Some people began to wonder if the diplomats had been mistaken, if the Empire's threats were nothing more than empty bluster. But Jack knew better. He had seen the Empire's ships with his own eyes, and he could feel in his gut that they were coming. It was only a matter of time. And then, on the 7th day of their patrol, Jack's worst fears were realized. The Empire's fleet appeared on the horizon, a massive armada of ships that seemed to stretch on forever. Jack's heart raced as he realized the scale of the threat that they were facing. The Empire's ships were unlike anything he had ever seen before, armed with weapons that could destroy entire planets in a single blast. But Jack knew that he couldn't let fear overcome him. Earth was counting on him and his team to be their first line of defense, to hold off the Empire's attack long enough for the rest of the planet to prepare. With a deep breath, Jack gave the order to engage the enemy. His team of astronauts sprang into action, their ships darting and weaving through the Empire's fleet like tiny flies buzzing around a herd of elephants. They fired their weapons with everything they had, trying to take out as many of the Empire's ships as possible. But it was like trying to stop a tidal wave with a bucket. The Empire's ships barely seemed to notice the attacks, shrugging off the Earth's weapons like they were nothing. As the battle raged on, Jack began to realize the hopelessness of their situation. The Empire's fleet was simply too big, too powerful. Earth's forces were like ants trying to fight against a giant. But even in the face of overwhelming odds, Jack refused to give up. He knew that every second they could delay the Empire's advance was another second that Earth had to prepare, another chance for the people of his planet to find a way to fight back. So Jack and his team fought on, even as their ships were battered and broken by the Empire's relentless assault. They fought with everything they had, knowing that the fate of Earth itself hung in the balance. In the end, it wasn't enough. The Empire's fleet broke through the Earth's defenses, scattering Jack's team and sending them retreating back to the safety of their home planet. But even as they fled, Jack knew that the fight was far from over. The Empire might have won this battle, but Earth would not go down without a fight. As long as there was still breath in his body, Jack would keep fighting to defend his home and his people. The war had only just begun, and the future of the entire human race hung in the balance. But with courage, determination, and the unbreakable spirit of Earth's people, there was still hope that they could find a way to victory, no matter how dark the path ahead might seem. Despite the bravery of Jack and his team, the Galactic Empire's first attack had left Earth's defenses badly weakened. The Empire's ships were simply too powerful, their weapons too advanced, for Earth's forces to stand against them for long. But the people of Earth refused to give up hope. They knew that they were fighting for their very survival, and they were determined to do whatever it took to protect their home and their loved ones. The leaders of the Earth Alliance worked tirelessly to come up with a plan to fight back against the Empire. They gathered together the greatest scientists and engineers from across the planet, tasking them with finding a way to even the odds against their enemy. For days and nights on end, the scientists worked without rest, poring over data and running countless simulations. They tested new weapons designs and experimented with never-before-seen technologies, pushing the boundaries of what was possible in their desperate quest for a solution. And then, finally, they had a breakthrough. The scientists had discovered a way to create a new type of weapon, one that could potentially turn the tide of the war in Earth's favor. The weapon was based on a previously unknown form of energy, one that the scientists had stumbled upon almost by accident. When harnessed and focused through a special device, this energy could create a beam of unimaginable power, capable of cutting through even the strongest of the Empire's shields like they were made of paper. The scientists worked around the clock to turn their discovery into a reality, building prototype after prototype and testing them under the most extreme conditions imaginable. And finally, after weeks of tireless effort, they had a working model of the weapon ready for use. The leaders of the Earth Alliance were thrilled by the news. At last, they had a chance to fight back against the Empire on equal footing. They immediately ordered the mass production of the new weapon, with factories across the planet working day and night to churn out as many of the devices as possible. At the same time, Earth's military forces began to regroup and prepare for the next phase of the war. They knew that the Empire would not rest until they had conquered the planet completely, and they were determined to be ready for them when they came. Jack and his team of brave astronauts were once again at the forefront of the fight. They took to the skies in their ships, patrolling the edges of the solar system and keeping a watchful eye out for any sign of the Empire's fleet. And then, one fateful day, the Empire returned. A massive armada of ships, even larger than the one that had attacked before, appeared on the horizon, bearing down on Earth with terrifying speed. But this time, Earth was ready for them. As the Empire's ships entered range, Earth's forces unleashed their new weapon upon them, firing beams of pure energy that cut through the enemy fleet like a hot knife through butter. The Empire's ships reeled under the onslaught, their shields failing and their hulls buckling under the incredible power of Earth's new technology. For the first time in the war, the people of Earth began to feel a glimmer of hope, a sense that maybe, just maybe, they could actually win this fight. But the Empire was not so easily defeated. Even as their ships fell before Earth's might, they kept coming, wave after wave of them, like an endless tide of destruction. The battle raged on for hours, with both sides taking heavy losses. Jack and his team fought with everything they had, dodging and weaving through the chaos of the battlefield, taking out as many of the enemy ships as they could. But even with their new weapon, Earth's forces were still badly outnumbered. The Empire's fleet seemed to stretch on forever, an endless sea of metal and death that threatened to swallow the planet whole. As the battle neared its climax, Jack knew that they were running out of time. The Empire's ships were getting closer and closer to Earth's surface, and if they broke through the planet's defenses, all would be lost. In a desperate gamble, Jack rallied his team for one final charge. They flew their ships straight into the heart of the enemy fleet, firing their weapons with everything they had, determined to take as many of the Empire's ships with them as they could. It was a suicide mission, and they all knew it. But Jack and his team also knew that they had no choice. Earth needed them to buy just a little more time, to give the planet's defenses a chance to regroup and launch one final desperate counterattack. As they flew to their doom, Jack closed his eyes and thought of all the people he was fighting for. His family, his friends, and the billions of innocent lives that hung in the balance. He knew that he might not survive this day, but he also knew that he had made the right choice. For Earth, for humanity, he would gladly give his life 1,000 times over. The fate of the planet hung by a thread, balanced on the razor's edge between salvation and destruction. But even in the darkest of moments, the people of Earth refused to give up hope. They would fight to the bitter end, no matter the cost, to defend their home and secure a future for the generations to come. The battle between Earth and the Galactic Empire had reached a critical point. Despite the bravery of Jack and his team, and the power of Earth's new energy weapon, the Empire's forces were still pushing forward, drawing ever closer to the planet's surface. The leaders of the Earth Alliance knew that they were running out of options. The Empire's fleet was simply too vast, their technology too advanced, for Earth to defeat them through conventional means alone. In a desperate attempt to turn the tide, the Alliance turned to its last resort, the team of brilliant scientists who had developed the energy weapon that had given Earth a fighting chance. The scientists were tasked with finding a way to use their technology to create an even more powerful weapon, one that could potentially destroy the Empire's entire fleet in a single blow. It was a daunting challenge, but the scientists knew that the fate of the planet rested on their shoulders. For days and nights on end, they labored in their laboratories, pushing their minds and bodies to the limit as they sought to unravel the secrets of the universe itself. They experimented with new materials and techniques, testing and retesting their designs until they were on the brink of exhaustion. And then, finally, they had a breakthrough. By combining the power of their energy weapon with a new type of quantum entanglement technology, the scientists believed that they could create a device capable of unleashing a burst of energy so powerful that it would annihilate anything in its path. The device was christened the Doomsday Weapon, and the Earth Alliance wasted no time in beginning its construction. Factories across the planet were retooled to produce the necessary components, while teams of engineers worked around the clock to assemble the final product. But even as Earth raced to complete its ultimate weapon, the Empire's forces continued their relentless advance. They bombarded the planet's defenses with a never-ending barrage of laser fire and plasma bombs, slowly but surely wearing down Earth's resistance. Jack and his team were in the thick of the fighting, doing everything they could to buy more time for the scientists to complete their work. They flew suicide missions deep into enemy territory, drawing the Empire's fire away from Earth's cities and key infrastructure. Many of Jack's friends and comrades fell in battle, their lives given in selfless sacrifice for the greater good. But Jack himself refused to yield, even as the odds against them grew more and more insurmountable. Finally, after weeks of round-the-clock effort, the Doomsday Weapon was ready. The Earth Alliance's leaders gave the order to deploy it, knowing that this was their last chance to save the planet from total annihilation. The weapon was loaded onto a specially designed spacecraft, piloted by Jack himself. The plan was to fly the ship directly into the heart of the Empire's fleet, detonating the weapon at the moment of impact and hopefully taking out the entire armada in one fell swoop. It was a desperate gamble, but it was the only chance Earth had left. As Jack prepared for his final mission, he knew that he might not survive to see the outcome. But he also knew that he had no choice. The fate of the entire planet rested on his shoulders, and he would not let them down. With a heavy heart, Jack said his goodbyes to his loved ones and boarded the spacecraft. As he took off into the sky, he could see the Empire's ships looming on the horizon, a seemingly endless sea of metal and death. But Jack refused to let fear overtake him. He knew that he had a job to do, and he would see it through to the end, no matter the cost. As he approached the enemy fleet, Jack could feel the weight of the Doomsday Weapon in his ship's hold. He knew that he was carrying the hopes and dreams of an entire world with him, and he silently prayed that this desperate gamble would pay off. Suddenly, the Empire's ships opened fire, filling the sky with a blinding barrage of laser beams and plasma blasts. Jack dodged and weaved through the onslaught, pushing his ship to its limits as he raced towards his target. Finally, he reached the heart of the enemy fleet. With a final defiant yell, Jack slammed his fist down on the detonator, activating the Doomsday Weapon and sealing his own fate in the process. For a moment, there was nothing but a blinding flash of light, a silent explosion that seemed to engulf the entire universe. And then, as the light faded, the true extent of the weapon's power became clear. The Empire's fleet was gone, reduced to nothing more than a cloud of debris and ash. And in the center of it all, a single battered spacecraft emerged, its pilot triumphant even in death. Earth had won, but the cost had been high. As the people of the planet celebrated their victory, they also mourned the loss of so many brave heroes, including Jack himself. But even in their grief, they knew that they had been given a second chance, a new hope for a brighter future. And they vowed to honor the memory of those who had given their lives to make that future possible, to build a world worthy of their sacrifice. The road ahead would not be easy, But the people of Earth would face it together, united in their determination to create a better tomorrow for all. In the aftermath of the doomsday weapons detonation, the people of Earth struggled to come to terms with the magnitude of what had happened. The Empire's fleet had been destroyed, but at a terrible cost. Countless lives had been lost, including that of Jack, the brave hero who had given everything to save his planet. As the dust settled and the debris from the battle began to clear, the leaders of the Earth Alliance knew that they had to act quickly to secure their victory. They sent out teams of scientists and engineers to study the remains of the Empire's ships, hoping to glean any information they could about their enemy's technology and weaknesses. At the same time, Earth's military forces began to mobilize once again, this time to establish a perimeter around the planet and prevent any surviving Empire ships from launching a counterattack. They knew that the Empire was far from defeated and that they would have to remain vigilant if they hoped to protect their hard-won freedom. But even as Earth's defenses were bolstered and its people began to rebuild, a new threat was emerging from the shadows. Unbeknownst to the Earth Alliance, a small group of Empire loyalists had survived the destruction of their fleet and were now plotting their revenge against the planet that had defied them. Led by a ruthless commander named Zorg, these loyalists began to gather in secret, building their strength and biding their time until the moment was right to strike. They infiltrated Earth's cities and towns, blending in with the population and gathering intelligence on the planet's defenses and weaknesses. As the weeks turned into months, the people of Earth began to let their guard down, believing that the worst of the danger had passed. They returned to their normal lives, working to rebuild their homes and communities, and trying to put the horrors of the war behind them. But all the while, Zorg and his followers were growing stronger, preparing for the day when they would finally unleash their vengeance upon the unsuspecting people of Earth. And then, one fateful day, that moment finally came. In a coordinated attack that caught Earth's defenses completely off guard, Zorg and his loyalists struck at the heart of the planet's government, unleashing chaos and destruction on a scale that had never been seen before. Bombs exploded in the streets, buildings collapsed, and fires raged out of control as the loyalists rampaged through the city, slaughtering anyone who stood in their way. The Earth Alliance's leaders were caught in the crossfire, many of them killed or captured before they could even react. In the midst of the chaos, a small group of survivors managed to escape the carnage, fleeing to a secret underground bunker that had been built in case of just such an emergency. Among them were some of Earth's greatest scientists and engineers, as well as a handful of military leaders who had managed to survive the initial attack. As they huddled together in the darkness of the bunker, these survivors knew that they were the only hope for Earth's future. They had to find a way to fight back against Zorg and his loyalists, to reclaim their planet and restore order to their shattered world. But they also knew that the odds were stacked against them. Zorg's forces were well-armed and well-organized, and they had the element of surprise on their side. The survivors, on the other hand, were outnumbered and outgunned, with little more than their wits and their determination to keep them going. In the days and weeks that followed, the survivors worked tirelessly to come up with a plan to fight back against their enemy. They scavenged for weapons and supplies, and they reached out to any allies they could find, hoping to build a resistance movement that could challenge Zorg's reign of terror. At the same time, they searched for any information they could find about their enemy's weaknesses, hoping to find a way to exploit them and turn the tide of the battle in their favor. It was a desperate struggle, fought in the shadows and the ruins of Earth's once great cities, but the survivors refused to give up, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. They knew that they were fighting not just for their own lives, but for the future of their entire planet. But the survivors refused to give up, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. They knew that they were fighting not just for their own lives, but for the future of their entire planet, and they would not rest until they had achieved victory, no matter the cost. As the battle raged on, the survivors began to uncover clues about the true nature of their enemy and the sinister force that had been behind the Empire's attack on Earth all along. They realized that they were facing a threat even greater than they had ever imagined, one that threatened not just their own world, but the entire galaxy itself. And so, with renewed determination and a sense of purpose that could not be shaken, the survivors prepared themselves for the final battle, knowing that the fate of the universe itself hung in the balance, and that they were the only ones who could save it from the darkness that threatened to engulf all of creation. As the survivors of Earth's resistance movement continued their desperate struggle against the forces of Commander Zorg and his Empire loyalists, they began to uncover a terrifying truth about the nature of their enemy. Through intercepted communications and captured intelligence, they learned that Zorg was not acting alone, but was in fact working under the direction of a far more powerful and sinister force, a shadowy organization known only as the Galactic Overlords. These overlords, it seemed, had been manipulating events from behind the scenes for centuries, using the Empire and other puppet regimes to extend their control over the galaxy and bend entire civilizations to their will. The survivors were shocked by this revelation, but they also knew that it only made their fight all the more important. They were no longer just fighting for the freedom of Earth, but for the freedom of the entire universe itself. With renewed determination, the resistance fighters redoubled their efforts, launching daring raids against Zorg's strongholds and sabotaging his supply lines at every turn. They formed alliances with other rebel groups on nearby planets, sharing intelligence and resources in a united front against their common enemy. But even as they fought bravely on, the resistance knew that they were running out of time. Zorg's forces were growing stronger by the day, and the Overlord's grip on the galaxy was tightening with each passing moment. In a desperate attempt to turn the tide of the war, the Resistance's leaders hatched a daring plan. They would send a small team of their most skilled fighters on a suicide mission deep into enemy territory, with the goal of infiltrating the Overlord's central command and destroying it from within. Leading the mission was none other than Sarah, Jack's sister and one of the Resistance's most fearless warriors. She had been fighting alongside her brother since the beginning of the war and had sworn to carry on his legacy after his tragic death. With a heavy heart but unwavering resolve, Sarah and her team set out on their perilous journey, knowing that the fate of the entire galaxy rested on their shoulders. They fought their way through hordes of enemy soldiers and battled past deadly traps and defenses, each obstacle testing their skills and their determination to the limit. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity of combat and danger, they'd reached their target, the heavily guarded fortress that served as the Overlord's central command. With no time to lose, Sarah and her team fought their way inside, battling past the Overlord's elite guards and finally coming face to face with their ultimate enemy. In that moment, Sarah saw the true face of evil, a monstrous being of pure darkness and malice, its very presence radiating an aura of dread and despair. But even in the face of this ultimate adversary, Sarah refused to back down. With a defiant cry, she charged forward, her weapons blazing and her heart filled with the fire of righteous anger. The battle that followed was epic in scope and intensity, a clash of titans that shook the very foundations of the fortress itself. Sarah and her team fought with everything they had, pouring all of their skill and courage into the fight. In the end, though, it was Sarah who struck the final blow. With a mighty swing of her blade, she cleaved the Overlord's head from its body, sending a shockwave of energy rippling out through the fortress and beyond. As the Overlord's lifeless body crumpled to the ground, a strange thing began to happen. All around the galaxy, the Overlord's puppet regimes and loyal soldiers suddenly collapsed, their will to fight vanishing in an instant. It was as if a great weight had been lifted from the shoulders of the universe itself, a darkness that had plagued it for centuries finally vanished forever. In the days and weeks that followed, the people of Earth and countless other worlds celebrated their hard-won victory, marveling at the courage and sacrifice of Sarah and her team. But even as they reveled in their triumph, they knew that the fight was far from over. The Overlords may have been defeated, but there would always be new threats to face, new challenges to overcome. And so, with a renewed sense of purpose and an unbreakable spirit of unity, the people of the galaxy set out to build a new future together, a future free from tyranny and oppression, where all beings could live in peace and harmony. It would not be an easy road, but they knew that they had the strength and the courage to see it through, no matter what obstacles lay ahead. For they had learned the most important lesson of all, that in the face of darkness and despair, there is always hope, and that with courage and determination, anything is possible. In the aftermath of the Galactic Overlord's defeat, the people of Earth and the other liberated worlds set about the task of rebuilding their shattered societies. It was a monumental undertaking, one that would require years of hard work and sacrifice, but they knew that it was a price they were willing to pay for their freedom. As the reconstruction efforts got underway, Sarah and her team of resistance fighters found themselves hailed as heroes, their names and deeds celebrated across the galaxy. But for Sarah, the accolades meant little in the face of the loss she had suffered. She thought constantly of her brother Jack, the brave warrior who had given his life to save their world from the Empire's tyranny. She knew that he would have been proud of what they had accomplished, but his absence left a hole in her heart that could never be filled. In the midst of her grief, however, Sarah found solace in the company of her fellow survivors, the men and women who had fought alongside her through the darkest of times. Together, they formed a bond that could never be broken, a family forged in the fires of war and tempered by the unbreakable spirit of hope. As the weeks turned into months, and the months into years, the people of the galaxy slowly began to heal from the wounds of the past. Cities were rebuilt, governments were reformed, and the scars of the Overlord's reign began to fade. But even as they looked to the future with hope and optimism, they never forgot the sacrifices of those who had come before them. The names of Jack and his fellow heroes were etched into monuments and memorials across the galaxy, their deeds remembered and honored for generations to come. And as for Sarah, she found a new purpose in life, dedicating herself to the cause of peace and unity among all peoples. She became a leader and a visionary, working tirelessly to build bridges between worlds and bring an end to the cycle of violence and oppression that had plagued the galaxy for so long. Through her efforts, and the efforts of countless others like her, a new era of prosperity and harmony began to dawn across the stars. The people of the galaxy came together as never before, united by a common vision of a better tomorrow. But even as they celebrated their newfound unity, they knew that the road ahead would not be an easy one. There would always be new challenges to face, new threats to confront, and new sacrifices to be made. And yet they faced these challenges with courage and determination, knowing that they had the strength and the resilience to overcome any obstacle that stood in their way. They had learned the hard way that true peace and freedom could only be won through struggle and sacrifice, and they were ready to fight for it with all that they had. As Sarah stood before a cheering crowd of millions, her eyes shining with the light of hope and determination, she knew that her brother's legacy would live on forever. For in the end, it was not the weapons or the armies that had saved the galaxy from the Overlord's tyranny, but the unbreakable spirit of the people themselves. And as long as that spirit endured, as long as there were those willing to stand up and fight for what was right, no force in the universe could ever truly conquer them. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, and they would continue to do so, no matter what challenges lay ahead. For in the end, that was the true meaning of their victory, not the defeat of a single enemy, but the triumph of the human spirit itself. And as Sarah looked out at the sea of faces before her, each one filled with the same hope and determination that burned within her own heart, she knew that they had truly won the battle for the future of the galaxy. Together, they would build a new world, a world where every being could live in peace and freedom, where the horrors of war and oppression were nothing more than distant memories. And though the road ahead would be long and hard, they would walk it with heads held high, knowing that they had the strength and the courage to see it through to the end. And so, as the sun set on a new day and a new era for the people of the galaxy, Sarah and her fellow survivors looked to the future with hope and determination. ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. For they had learned the most important lesson of all, that in the face of adversity, the only way to truly win is to stand together, united in the cause of justice and freedom for all.